back again. Congratulations, you made it through another day. Uncle Russ jumping up and down right here at good old Group W cable in Dearborn, Michigan. Beautiful Dearborn. Speaking of beauty, I have a marvelous young person, a German student, Heidi Schriefer, a student in the Dearborn Public Schools who recently spent, I believe, a week or two with a German family. And I've asked Heidi to come over today and talk a little bit about her experiences in Germany. Of course, the experience that I had in Germany was that I kept getting wound up in, what do they call that, Wiener Schnitzel? We'll have to talk to her about that. It was food. If you think that the Americans like to eat, well, you meet the Germans. Boy, do they like to eat, and do they eat well. Anyway, we'll be talking to Heidi Schriefer in just a minute. Of course, if you want to know what's been on my mind this week, I guess it was the fact that I took a ride downtown Detroit, and I jumped on Michigan Avenue down around Telegraph in Dearborn, and it was sort of a ride, you know, those times where you hop in the car to get away from it all. I don't know about you, but every once in a while when I'm just frustrated, I can't handle it at home, I can't handle it in school, I don't want the phone to ring, I just want to get away. I go in my little metal and plastic container called an automobile, and I take a little drive. And I was driving, it became apparent to me that some things were happening. For instance, in what we used to call Old Dearborn, which is really West Dearborn, I noticed that there are more stores going up for sale, and I guess there's some controversy on the fact that the big furniture store is out of there now, and they're going to put another big drugstore. And some people are wondering whether or not we need another giant drugstore down in that area. We'll be talking about that on another show. Then as I moved past the old Ford Motor Company, it looked there, you know, it was still there. And with their new report that they had a profitable quarter, I guess things are improving for the Ford Motor Company. Of course, I read the Forbes article which said that the Ford Motor Company still has some financial things that it's going to have to deal with before it's out of the woods. After all, it lost a lot of money for the last 4 years, and only recently has it started to become profitable again. I guess that's what drives me crazy when I see some of our citizens in this town, of all towns, driving foreign cars. I saw one of my fellow teachers the other day, a person who's very big in our union, driving around in a foreign automobile, and somehow that bothered me. Now, granted, you know, people have the right to drive what car they want, and, you know, you can argue the point, well, many of the foreign cars create jobs for American workers, so forth and so on. However, I don't know. I think if you live in a town, you ought to support the main industry in that town. I'm proud to say I drive a Ford, and it's a fine automobile. I have a little Escort, and it's been a marvelous car. And if I buy another one, I think it's going to be a Ford again. But that's my opinion. But as I was taking my little drive, as I came through East Dearborn, there were some improvements going on down there. You know, some people like to crack Fred Hoffman when he was director and say that that was a boondoggle down there in East Dearborn. I don't know. It looked pretty nice to me. Town Hall was looking pretty spiffy, even though I wish they'd call it City Hall. There was something awful pretentious about being called a town hall. It sounded like we belong in Birmingham. I was quite satisfied with City Hall, but, you know, times and things change. And then all of a sudden I hit Wyoming and Michigan Avenue. And there, guess what I saw? Well, some of the ladies of the evening. Yep, they're working right down there, right on the border, and evidently they're working with the trucks. Do you ever notice some of these trucks have like little bedrooms in them? Well, if you're a trucker and you've been on the road for a long time, and there happens to be a lady of the evening standing around, before long, guess what? Well, you guessed it. Now, I didn't say that. Your mind is doing whatever it's doing, but sure enough. And then I moved down through Michigan Avenue in Livernois, and that neighborhood used to be just a super neighborhood. Mostly Polish immigrants, Ukrainian people. And now it's a mixture, and you can start seeing the decay working its ugliness over there. And yet there were still houses and buildings that were well kept up. And then finally I hit down past Central there, and boy, that's become zero, just a nothing area in Detroit. And as I proceeded over the expressway on Michigan Avenue heading toward downtown Detroit, I came in the old Corktown area. Remember that? The old Corktown area? And a lot of blight in there now. And Tiger Stadium, Briggs Stadium, Natum Field, whatever you recall, It needed a paint job. I'll tell you, I guess they're working on it. They're bricking it up, but it still looked terrible. I guess the city bought that. And then I hit Washington Boulevard. I don't know what you feel about Washington Boulevard, but it's atrocious. It looks like monkey bars, red monkey bars there. The only thing missing are some monkeys and bananas swinging on them. They ought to take the guy that designed that, I think it was Rossetti or something, a Birmingham architect, and make him, his punishment would be to look at what he did to that marvelous, stately Washington Boulevard. Forever and forever, he'll have to stare at the abortion that he created on Washington Boulevard. And then downtown Detroit, and the saddest view of all, when I came across and I came by the old J.L. Hudson building, deserted. And then the Rensen. You know, that's a magnificent building. It's a beautiful building, except it shouldn't have been built on the river. What's wrong with us in this area? Why do we take our great views and cover them up with great buildings? We should have moved it back so that the river, that marvelous view of our city, could be enjoyed by our citizens. To enjoy the skyline of Detroit, you have to go to Windsor. Oh, well, that's only my opinion. What's your opinion? After all, somebody once said, Gibb, you're opinionated. Right. Having opinions means you're alive. Nothing bothers me more than people that don't have an opinion, where they're all just says everything is nice. Yes, that's nice. This is nice. Doggone it, everything isn't nice. And there are times you want to jump up and down. And quite frankly, I didn't enjoy my ride downtown Detroit. I was a little bit disappointed. Glad to get back home in Dearborn, even though we got a lot of problems here. Well, let's not talk about problems. Let's talk about some of the joys of living in Dearborn. And we have a young person from Dearborn, Heidi Schriefer, a student who just returned from Germany, and we'll get her point of view on how she views American culture now that she's had a moment or two to savor and to examine German culture. I'll be back right after these announcements. Hello again, Russ Gibb. My guest today, Heidi Schriefer, a young person who is a student in the Dearborn Public Schools, and along with kids from Dearborn High, Fortson High, and Etzel, recently took a journey to Germany. Heidi, tell me how that came about.
Well, Mrs. Putzig, my German teacher at Dearborn High, has taken a few trips over to Germany with some of the kids from her classes. And we decided this year that we wanted to go with the kids from Etzelford and Fortson also. So we were looking around for trips, and most of them that were either for a week or 10 days were really, really expensive. And we found a trip that was for 2 weeks, which meant we had to take time off of school, that was less expensive than the other ones for a week or 10 days. So she went through a lot of trouble getting clearance from the Board of Education so that we could take time off of school. And we got hooked up with a trip that took us to southern Germany, northern Switzerland, and Austria, and also included a 5-day homestay in Germany.
How many youngsters took advantage of this
There were
opportunity?
30.
30 kids from Dearborn. And you spent how long in Germany then? I mean, on your total trip?
2 weeks.
2 weeks, 14 days.
Right.
That doesn't seem like a lot of time to get to know a culture.
No, it's not.
What was your experience? Tell me about it. Relate it.
Well, first, it was a lot of fun.
It was fun.
It was really fun.
Did you learn anything?
I learned a lot.
Okay, good.
I think my German improved about 200 or 300% because you were just thrown into a culture where no one spoke English and you had no other way to survive. You had to speak German. There were a lot of times where I was on the street and I was lost, and the only way I could find directions was ask someone in German. And the homestay, we were forced to speak German because they spoke German.
Now, you actually stayed in a German family?
Right.
Home?
Right.
And how was that arranged? I mean, how'd the families, how were they picked out?
Well, everyone stayed in the same city called Ravensburg.
Now, where's Ravensburg?
It is very, very southern Germany. Like, from my window in my family, if I looked straight ahead, I could see Switzerland. If I looked to my left, I could see Austria.
So you're right on the corner.
I was right. We were right on the corner. And there was a man named Herr Meyer who lives in Ravensburg, and he got us set up with all these families. and he just asked for people in Ravensburg if they wanted to take in a couple kids from America for 5 days, and the response was really great.
What was your observation about Germany? Your first impression of Germany?
It was gorgeous. It
Beautiful.
was so beautiful. We landed in Frankfurt Airport and couldn't believe how clean it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we drove along the Autobahn, which is the main streets in Germany, there are just so many hills and mountains, and everything was so green already, and everything's very quaint. All the villages and towns are really quaint too.
Talk about the cleanliness. How do you feel about your own country now, after you've been to Germany?
Not good.
Why do you think that their society, what's the difference in the societies?
Well, I think the Germans are much more practical.
Practical people.
They're really practical, and they're very family-oriented. The family stays together. Like in my family, one of my brothers was 28. He was still living at home.
Okay.
Then they stay together really long, and they know that they have a beautiful country because a lot of them have been over to America.
Mm-hmm.
And they've said, well, it's really fun, but it's just not as clean as it is over here. And I think once they've seen other countries, they know that they don't want their country to get any dirtier. So
they work at it.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, recently in Germany, the Green Party has gained great political strength based on the fact that they are opposing now, you didn't get down to the Ruhr Valley, did you?
No.
Now, that's like Detroit. I mean, that's the industrial heart. And there are a lot of people in Germany, Heidi, who are very concerned that their country is getting dirtier, that the pollution levels are rising, and that was what the Green Party was all about. Did you bump into the Green Party there?
No, not at all.
Had you heard about it?
No, I hadn't.
You didn't even talk about it over there?
No.
Maybe I'm saying the wrong name. I'm sure it's the Green Party. They gained several seats in the, what do you call their Congress? Bergenstassen? Or what's their Congress?
I don't know.
Oh,
It's
come
just
on.
the
You
parliament.
do. They have another name for it.
I don't know.
Oh, you're
Oh, the
kidding.
Bundesrepublik?
Yeah, well, is that what you call it? That's like their Congress. And say it to me.
Bundesrepublik.
Bundesrepublik.
Yeah.
See, I want to say the Bergenstadt or something. I remember that from German movies. Tell me about your family over there.
They were so typically German, it was funny. Their mother and the father they were smaller, and you looked at them, they all had the fiery blue eyes and blonde hair. And the kids were really nice. They had 6 kids.
6?
But only 3 lived at home. And the oldest one, Mateus, is 28, and he had had 8 years of English. They start teaching their second language, I think, in 5th or 4th grade. But he would never speak it unless I got totally lost. And
so you had to speak German?
So I had to speak German. There were 2 people to a family in most cases, so I was rooming with a friend of mine, Colleen Schmitz.
Okay.
Now, there was one instance where we had a first-year student living by himself. And that was kind of tough, because this is my 2nd year of German, and I still had problems.
You're a junior then
Right, I'm a junior.
High school.
And then there was one family that they take 5 boys every year. But they were really nice. They rotated their schedule around Colleen and me, and were always willing to take us places and show us some of the sights of Ravensburg, which was really nice.
What is Ravensburg's how do they make their existence? Is that a tourist?
It's mostly wine.
Wine?
There's a city of Ravensburg, and then there's 4 regions around it. And the northern region is called Weingarten. And everywhere you look, you see vineyards and upon vineyards.
Did you taste some of the grapes?
Yeah.
Did your mother here know about that?
Yeah, she did.
She said that was okay?
Yeah.
Because that's really a custom.
It's part of the culture.
In Germany. What other things did you find out about German people compared to American people? You said they were practical. What do you really mean by that?
They don't spend a lot of money on extravagant things, really.
For instance?
For instance, not many of them will take really expensive trips over, like maybe to Hawaii. I mean, I know it's a lot farther, but part of the reason is because there are so many countries around Germany that are really close. Like Italy is right there, France is right there. And they really aren't egotistical, I guess I could say. They don't put that much emphasis on their appearance.
On their appearance?
I noticed.
Now, you tell me they're clean people. Now, are you telling me another thing? Are you trying to say something else about the Germans?
I mean, they're not, they don't worry too much about what they're wearing.
Fashions.
Fashions,
They're
right.
not fashion conscious,
Right.
as
No,
we would
not
be.
Not really. Mm-mm.
Did you have any opportunity to talk to them about their perceptions of America?
Yeah, I did.
And what did you find?
That was about the first question I asked. The first thing I asked was what they thought about Reagan.
Okay, what did they think about
They
President?
said that he was a war man.
A war man.
They're really worried that he's going to start a war.
Okay.
And they liked Americans on their own, but they were they're wondering where I got the money to come on the trip.
Okay.
Because they knew I was from the Detroit area.
Right.
And they always hear about how bad Detroit is right now, in the economy, and they just kind of kept leaning towards the question with, finally they asked me, how did you get the money to come here? Because they knew it was an expensive trip.
Mm-hmm.
So I just mentioned, well, I earned all the money by myself working, and then I came.
Did they say that, do you think that that was their media presenting a picture of an area? How do you feel about that? I mean, what did you say? Well, that's not true. The majority of people in Michigan are working. The majority of citizens are employed.
Well, they understood that, they knew that media exaggerated the picture of
Even in Germany,
Yeah.
just as they do here. They
Yeah,
were
they knew.
suspicious of the media.
Yeah. So I just explained to them that it was bad, but we're not in a depression like we were in the 1930s. It's bad, but not real bad.
Did they ever ask you about black people and how they're treated in America?
Yes, they did.
And what was their perception?
Well, there were signs all over Germany that read "Ich werde ein Mensch sein," and it had the picture of an African man that looked very malnourished, very sad, and the sign means "I will be a man." And they really think that the black people are persecuted over here.
In this country. How are they treated in Germany?
There really aren't very many. The only black people I saw were people who were on a tour from the United States.
I see.
So I really couldn't judge.
Do you think that maybe the German people forget about, it's easy to see another person's problem.
Yes.
And champion somebody that's miles away and not realize that many blacks in our society are wealthy.
Yes.
Many blacks are very well educated. That many, in fact, the majority of black people that I know are hardworking in this country. They're not they're not starving here. And yet the image, when I traveled abroad, was always that somehow the blacks were all downtrodden in the United States. That, again, is a media perception.
Yes, it is.
What other perceptions did you find that was sort of funny, what they thought about America?
Oh, they, whenever we talk about old buildings and how many historical sites we have, they just have to laugh. Because maybe the latest thing that we have dating back to would be the 1700s. And the town hall in Ravensburg, I think, was built in 1160.
1160.
So when we talk about our history, they just laugh because theirs is so much older.
And they feel that sense of superiority
Yes, they
as
really
far as
do.
culture is concerned. What about the food in Germany?
It's great.
Did you hear me earlier when I said that when you go to Germany, they seem to eat all the time? Did you have that perception?
Well, yes, I did.
Did you gain weight?
No.
didn't?
In the first week, I lost 10 pounds, but that's just because we did so much walking.
Yes,
We
they do
walked
walk more
everywhere.
in Europe.
Everything is close together, so they don't have to drive everywhere. They can walk, and plus they don't mind it. And when I went over there, I didn't mind walking at all because
It's beautiful and it's fun.
It is. It's really pretty. They do eat a lot. Their big meal, as ours would be at 6 or 7 o'clock at night, theirs is what we would call lunch, and the whole family comes home from work at 12 o'clock.
Everybody comes home.
Everyone comes home, and we sit down, and we have a nice meal, and then you've got about another half hour, an hour to rest before you go back to work. And then you go back to work, and then your dinner is probably about 8 o'clock at night.
And that's lighter than.
And that's much lighter.
Did they get into the snack just before bedtime? Did you get into tea or coffee?
Yeah, coffee.
Just before.
Coffee or maybe a small piece of cake.
A little. Oh, they love their cakes. They make
love it.
incredible cakes down there. Chocolate. They go nuts over chocolate.
They go nuts over chocolate.
What about teenagers? Did you meet any teenage boys when you were over there?
Yeah, we had two tour pals.
Tour pals?
Tour pals, one was, a girl was 16, her name was Hildegard, and boy Marius was 18. And they joined us after our family stay.
And what were they into? What were the German youth into?
Heavily into sports, really into sports. They're really interested in their school. Like when you ask them what their hobbies are, they'll say chemistry, English, and just start naming subjects. Where we would say, oh, I like to listen to the radio and things like that.
Did you bump into any punks in Germany?
Yeah, a lot.
A lot of punks.
Especially in Heidelberg, which is a big university town.
Now, why do you think that would be? That here you tell me they have close family ties and that the Germans are so clean, and yet punk seems just the antithesis of that.
Well, I think that's their method of revolution.
Letting go.
Yeah.
Heidi, I want to thank you for taking time to stop by today. I hope that you have further opportunities to travel. I wish that we could have had all the youngsters on your trip on the show, but obviously we couldn't. So I thank you for being their spokesman. Heidi Schriefer, young student from Dearborn High, and talking about her trip in Germany. Good luck.
Thank you.
Russ Gibb, I'll be back right after these announcements. Back again. Hey, Heidi Schriefer, marvelous young person. Did you find it interesting that the family, the things that she said about the German family, and then the very last question about the punks being very popular? We have to think about that sometime, maybe even talk about it. For those of you that took time to view the show today, I'd like to say thank you. For those of you that took time to drop me a card or a letter, I'd like to thank you. But most of all, I'd like to thank you for just being you. Russ Gibb, at random.